What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over an extended period of time?
It's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the Learning Leader Show.
Well, good. It's great to be with you. That's for sure, Ryan.
I love the fact that we have an uncommon commonality. We both have spent time in our lives at Ohio University. Me as a student, you as a teacher. Can you talk to me a little bit about that 6-year period when you were a teacher, a professor at Ohio University?
Yeah, I came there originally because Vern Alden had taken over as president there, and he was going to make this the Harvard of the Midwest. And he brought in all kinds of exciting people. And so I had just finished my doctor's degree at Cornell and got the chance to come initially as assistant to the dean of the business school, because you'll get a kick out of this. My faculty in graduate school said if I wanted to be at a university, I should be an administrator because I couldn't write. I found out later that it was too simple for them. They liked it more complex. I never forget, they asked for an analogy one time in a paper, and I said it went over like a pregnant high jumper. And the guy really was offended by that analogy. And so, but when I got there, Harry Everett, the dean, said, "Ken, I'd like you to teach a course." And I never thought about teaching because if you don't publish, you don't perish. He said, "I don't care anything about that." And so Paul Hersey had just arrived as the chairman of the management department. He put me in that department, teach a basic management course. And that was fine for me because I had done my doctoral dissertation on Fred Fiedler, who was the first situational leadership theorist. And after a couple of weeks, I came home and I told my wife, Margie, I said, "God, this teaching's fun. This is what I should be doing." She said, "What about the writing?" I said, "No, we'll figure something out." So I heard Hersey taught a great leadership course, and I asked him if I could sit in the next semester. And he said, "Nobody orders my course. You want to take it for credit, you're welcome." And he walked away. And I thought that was interesting because I had a doctor's degree and he didn't. And he wanted me to take his course for credit. So I told Margie, and she says, "Is he any good?" And I said, "He's supposed to be fabulous." She said, "Well, get your ego out of the way and take his damn course." So I had to talk the registrar into letting me in because I already had a PhD. And so I took Hersey's course and wrote the papers and everything. And June 67, he comes in my office and says, "Ken," he said, "I've been teaching for 10 years and they want me to write a textbook, and writing has never been my great suit, and I've been looking for a good writer like you. Would you co-author it with me?" I said, "We ought to be a great team. You don't like to write, and I'm not supposed to be good at it. Let's do it." And so we wrote this textbook, Management of Organizational Behavior, Utilizing Human Resources. So it was actually was 66 when I came to Ohio U and left in 70.
Wow, what a story! It's amazing that someone like you is told your writing is too simplistic. Is that what they said?
Well, they said that wasn't any good. I guess it was, it wasn't intellectual enough.
What did you think about that at the time?
Well, I thought, well, they ought to know and all that kind of thing. So I've always believed that in life, life is what happens to you when you're planning on doing something else. So I said, well, I'll try something else then. And but it was an interesting process, to have people tell you that, and then find out that that's really what you're good at. And because I love to tell stories, and all that, and it was interesting that I wrote The 1 Minute Manager with Spencer Johnson, and we had come to San Diego, and he was a children's book writer. He and his wife wrote all these books on value tales, the value of courage, the story of Jackie Robinson, The Value of Determination, story of Helen Keller, And so my wife met him first, and she hand carried him over. And she said, "Why don't you two write a children's book for managers? They won't read anything else." So he was working on a 1-minute scolding with a psychiatrist. And so I invited him to a seminar I was doing. And at the end of the thing, he was writing the scolding for parenting. And he came running up. And after the seminar, he said, "Forget parenting. Let's do the 1-minute manager." And that was in November. And we had a first draft of the book by the time we were going to the Rose Bowl, the end of December. And
Wow.
I said, "Well, let's go to New York and show it to them." He said, "No, they'll beat us up over the head and take all the money." He said, "We need to self-publish it." And so we self-published the 1-minute manager and sold 20,000 copies with no advertising, just through a group called the Young Presidents Organization that I had done a bunch of work with. They were all presidents who became president before they're 40 years old, and they have chapters all over the country and around the world. And it was unbelievable. We sold all that. We went to New York, and we had sold all those books. So all of a sudden they're interested in us,
23 million copies later, correct?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
23 million.
That's my total book sales. It's about probably 15 to 18 of the 1-minute manager.
I mean, could you ever have imagined that when you were writing it, when you finished it, even after you sold the first 20K on your own without a publisher, could you ever have imagined that?
No, it's really, it came out in 82, and we rewrote it a few years ago because we think that the young people think about leadership as being side by side, not top down. So we changed the 1-minute reprimand, the third secret, to 1-minute redirects, which is much more of a collaborative kind of thing. So, but it still sells like crazy.
I noticed you changed that. Did you want to change that? Or you said, I noticed that the young people say that you have to do that.
Yeah,
did you feel like you had to change with the times?
Yeah, we thought we updated it with the times, because when we went back and looked at it, it was a little top down.
Yeah.
In terms of the 1-minute manager was the one that set the goals and decided who to praise and who to reprimand. And nowadays, the young people, they don't want your job, but they want to be collaborative and feel like they're a part of the whole thing.
Why do you think that book caught on?
I think, well, we wrote a parable, and before that there was Jonathan Livingston Seagull and the Littlest Prince, but there had never been a parable in business, And right before that, all the best-selling books were Japanese, about Japanese management. And I think we were sick and tired of that. In fact, that year,
like Kaizen stuff, Kaizen, where the continuous, yeah, okay.
But that year, Tom Peters and Waterman came out with In Search of Excellence, and John Nestor came out with Megatrends, and the three of us dominated the bestseller list. And the fun thing about that is we were all at Cornell together. Tom Peters and I were fraternity brothers, and Nesbitt was a graduate student in my department. And so we said to Harvard, Harvard, it's Cornell.
I think part of it, I was trying to deconstruct and analyze this. Your book has been recommended to me by many of my managers as I was becoming a newer manager, and my leadership went from the football field into the business world. And I think part of it too is there isn't any fluff. One of the things that happens, especially with a publisher, I know this from writing a little bit, is you have this word count that you have to hit. Whereas it feels like you guys said, what's the fewest number of words we could write, and then let's just publish the thing. And in a way, people appreciate that, where it's just packed full from literally first word to the last word, as well as in having some really memorable takeaways that you could implement immediately. And then I thought, well, that's kind of my deconstruction of why it caught on. And then obviously the uniqueness of being a parable, which is more people do that now than did it when you guys did. That's what I sense is part of why it not only caught on, but continues to sell a ton.
Yeah, and I think that, we decided that we would write a book. If you couldn't read it from on a flight from San Diego to San Francisco, it was too long,
Mhm.
And the reason Peters and Waterman and Nesbitt sold is the first chapter, the introductory chapter, they told all the content that they were going to do in the book. So the rest of the book was almost like a reference. So if you like this secret, you'd go there. The problem is a lot of people write and then they have the big bang up at the end of the book, but it's 250 or 300 pages later. Give it to them now and then use it as a reference book. That's the best way, I think.
Interesting. So that book's then, but you started your business, the Ken Blanchard Companies, in 1979, correct?
Yes.
I
Yep.
love the beginnings of things, maybe because I'm kind of in that place, or I have been for the last few years, the day one-ish type things of just, as Jeff Bezos might say. Can you take us back to that moment in 1979? You and your wife are starting your company, and what was going on at the time? What gave you the belief that this could actually become something? Is it before the book came out? So it's before you became wildly famous and known in the leadership space. So what was it at that time that led you to believe that you could do this?
Well, we came there, as I said, to Paul Hersey and I to write the third edition of our book and all, and he had created the Center for Leadership Studies, and we were part of that. And then it became clear that we had a different leadership philosophy in terms of running an organization. So Marge and I said, why don't we start our own organization? Because she had just finished her PhD in communication. And we had run into this group called the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and they had kind of adopted us and this gave us all kinds of work. And so we decided we'd have our own organization. And I was smart enough that Margie would be president, because she's much better at doing things like that. And I became initially the chairman of the board, but I hated that. So I changed my title to the chief spiritual officer. I'm in charge of spirit. I write a morning message to everybody every day. And I do three things. I praise people for the good work they're doing. I tell them about the good things that we're doing in the company. And then I tell them something that I've learned recently. Like I met a guy in the airport a while back from New Zealand, and I sent him some books, and he sent me an email and said, Ken, the business you're in is teaching people the power of love rather than love of power. And so I did a morning message on that, and we started the company, and we had several people that were either doctoral students or colleagues of mine at University of Massachusetts, and they helped us out, and they became founding associates. There was 8 of us that really kind of got the thing going. And then when the Woman and Manager came out, the thing went crazy. We almost went out of business because we couldn't deal with all the demands.
That is so it's interesting to me because you named the company after yourself.
Yeah.
How did you, and this is something that a challenge that I have not figured out yet. So when they call or they email or they write at that time and say, hey, Ken, we'd love for you to come teach our group or come develop a leadership development program within our company or our business, there's only one of you to go around, but the company is named after you. When the book comes out, your name is on the cover of the book. So they usually want you. How are you able to scale it beyond you when that's probably initially what everybody wanted?
Well, it's interesting in terms of that, because it's true, initially people wanted, but the people that helped start it with me were fabulous teachers and trainers. And so initially I started saying, I'll come, but I'm bringing one of my colleagues, and they'll work with me on this thing. And then people started to see the skills that they had and what they could do. And so we started to, broaden the thing from beyond just me. And so that it's interesting. The reason we named the company is I met Charles Schwab, and he had named the company, and he said, he didn't want to do it either, but people said, that they people love to recognize somebody, and why not name it so that they know that this is something that's it's around your work and all that kind of thing, rather than coming up with some other crazy name. So it really kind of was an interesting thing.
How were you guys making money in those early days? What work were you doing that earned money for the company?
Well, we were doing leadership training programs. I had developed that. We call it SL2, which is our situational approach to effective leadership, and developed that. And then, of course, when the 1 Minute Manager came out, we were doing tons of things on that. I got invited by a big seminar company to go all over the country and do 1 Minute Manager seminars, and having only 3 secrets was really powerful, that people could really do that. And then we started developing learning materials and videos and all. So we ended up having our company where we did in-person training. We had learning materials. We started to do stuff online, and all, and spread out. There now we got about 250 people working with us, and we have an office in the UK and in Asia and all that. It's really just amazing. We're over 40 years old, and only 5% of the companies that ever start ever last that long. And it's really is amazing, I think, and that it's been that, because I think we're out there trying to help people.
I want to get to simple truths of leadership, but just the 3 key parts that we kind of touched on, but I'll get specific here, is from the 1 Minute Manager that I think hit on, that made it memorable and implementable, meaning people could put into action immediately. 1 minute goals, 1 minute praisings, and 1 minute reprimands got changed to 1 minute redirects. Could you give me like the high level of just those 3 things of what the importance of 1 minute goals, 1 minute praisings, and 1 minute redirects?
Well, it's really clear that all good performance starts with clear goals. If people don't know what they're being asked to do, how are they going to do it? And I go in a lot of organizations and I said, do you have goals, for your organization in the first place? And they say, well, they got to be somewhere. They're maybe on a wall or something. And most people, they might set goals at the beginning of the year and then they file them and nobody does anything with them. And so we really felt it's so important to start that. And once the goals are clear, then it's so important that you don't disappear. The number one leadership style, Ryan, I found over the years, is I call seagull management. People give you something to do, set a goal, and then they disappear until you screw up or there's a mistake. And then they fly in, make a lot of noise, and dump on everybody, and then fly out. And we thought that you would need to stay in contact and start wandering around and see if you can catch people doing things right and accent the positive and praise them and cheer them on. And then if they're not moving in the right direction in a particular goal, initially the 1 minute reprimand was to say, we need to get you back on track. The redirect is a lot more collaborative, saying, I've noticed in this area you're not doing as well as we had hoped. Do you agree? And they always agree. What can I do to help you get back on track and get redirection? So those 3 things really go together in a powerful way.
The catching people doing something right, I feel like that's been repeated to me a million times from that stemmed from your work and the 1 Minute Manager, is that as I was getting promoted and rising the ranks within the company I worked at, they constantly said that, whether it was I worked in a sales organization, so whether I was working on the telephonic group or in the field, it was like, we're always needing to catch people doing things right and praising them. I feel like that really caught on, in addition to the goals aspect of it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that people know me for that one probably more than anything else, as you say.
It sounds so basic and simple, yet I guess it just wasn't happening, huh?
Yeah.
And still doesn't happen, I guess.
No, I still think that people ask me who really uses the stuff we teach. Well, I said only the number one company in each of their areas, because we've worked with them, Southwest Airlines and the airline business, Nordstrom's and in retail, Wegmans in the grocery business, Synovus in financial services, and Chick-fil-A in the fast food industry. And they all teach that and catch people doing things right. And all. My wife and I just went to Chick-fil-A the other day, and it's just fun. The guys out in the street and all, and they say, "Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your business." And they have hardly any turnover. People love to work there because they also get caught doing things right.
I mean, it's a parenting thing too. I was just at home at lunch with my wife, and that's what we were talking about with our children. Is our 7-year-old really kind of on her own, cleaned up after herself and was really kind about it. And we're like, let's reward, let's remind her, like, not just when things are bad, but hey, we have a great moment. Let's make sure she feels the love because we caught her doing it the right way.
Right. Yeah.
And that's exactly from the One Minute Manager. I mean, it's a
right.
parenting book too.
Yeah. And if people get caught doing things right, then they're going to want to do more things that they might get caught doing right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, as of today, what is your favorite thing to do when it comes to your businesses? Like, what's your favorite? Was it the teaching? Is it writing? Is it podcast? Like, what is your favorite thing to do?
Well, I love the writing, but I also love the teaching. I've really loved the Zoom outbreak
Really?
of COVID, because I'm a good Zoomer, and now I'm not going to have to travel anymore. If people wanted me to do a keynote, then I'll Zoom in, because a lot of times I'll go and do keynotes to companies and they put you on the screen and everybody's watching the screen anyway, and so I just love this whole Zooming around. I mean, did a Zoom the other day, and I had people from South Africa, from Europe, from South America, from India, all on the same Zoom. I went, duh. I mean, that's just great stuff.
And then you could walk out your office door and hit the beach and go surfing. I mean, you're in a good spot,
yeah.
right?
But the writing is, and
Yeah.
I've written, over 65 books, and my mother always said, "Why don't you write a book by yourself?" Because of all those books, I've only written 2 by myself. One on golf. So many people helped my golf game. I didn't know who to write it with. And then my spiritual journey. I couldn't co-author that. But this new book called the Simple Secrets of Leadership, I wrote with Randy Conley, who works with us, who's become a real expert in the field of trust. And I'm a big fan of servant leadership. And I think when you have a philosophy that you're there to serve rather than be served, that you work for your people, not for them, you build trust in them. They go together. And so the subtitle is 52 Ways to Build Trust. To be a servant leader and build trust. And there's 26 on servant leader, 26 on trust. And it really summarizes what we've been doing for over 40 years. And it's really been a fun project. I think it's going to make a difference out there. And all the initial feedback from people is that they're really excited about it. It officially comes out in February. And,
What's that? What's that co-writing process like? I mean, I find writing and books to be such a personal endeavor, and you've proven that it's better together almost to do it with other people. How do you do that?
Well, we start off by sitting down and saying, what content would we like to teach people? And we always want to break the content down so there's not too much of it, And then since the 1 Minute Manager was a parable, most of my books are parables. So then the next thing we say, if we're going to teach this content, how are we going to teach it as a parable? And come up with a story. And I have a couple of great editors that work with me in our company, Martha Lawrence and Renee Broadwell, and they're fabulous. And so we all kind of work as a team. And you know, some co-author, why don't you take that concept and come up with how we can put it into the story, and I'll do this one, you know, and we make it fun, you know. It's fun. I think too many people sitting there on their you know, and all that kind of thing, you know, put yourself to sleep, you know. I mean, and so make it fun. Now, this book is not a parable, but it really it's fabulous for people, because on one side of the page it might have a secret like the key to developing people, as we said, is to catch them doing something right. And then the second page first talks about why people aren't doing it. And then at the bottom of every page is how to make common sense common practice. And that's the flow. So the people could read, you know, one secret a week for the whole year, or we could divide it into 4 or 5 sections and all. But it's a great one to read with their team, because they can talk about how are we going to use this concept, you know.
Are you cool with it if I pull on a few threads from the book as I was taking notes?
Sure.
So I'm going to start with create a motivating environment. Starts on page 34 of the book. Profit is the applause you get for creating a motivating environment for your people, so they will take good care of your customers. So it's basically like, as Bill Walsh might say, the score takes care of itself, right? Profit will take care of itself if you create the environment for your people. That's what I sense.
Yes. And, you know, what I found, Ryan, is a lot of people thought the reason for being in business is to make money. We say, no, it's the applause you get for creating a motivating environment for your people, so they'll take good care of your customers. And what's really interesting is all the great companies I just mentioned, the Nordstroms and the Southwest and the Wegmans and all of them, they look at their number one customers, their people. If you take care of your people, train your people, love on your people, they go out of the way to take care of your second most important customer, the people who buy your services and products. And then they become raving fans of your organization, become part of your sales force, and that takes care of the profit and the bottom line. And so initially I wanted this book to be titled Duh, Why Isn't Common Sense Common Practice? But our publisher, Barrett Kohler, says duh doesn't translate in a lot of, you know, foreign languages and all that. And but that's really what the book is about, is duh, why aren't you doing this?
Next, I want to hit on expectations, Ken. And you write, you get from people what you expect. Can you talk to me about expectation setting, maybe both for yourself as well as for other people?
Well, I think it's really important when you sit down with people and you're setting goals and you're working with them, you're kind of saying, here's what my hopes and dreams are for you. How do you feel about that? You know, do you think that you're up for that, you know? And people say, wow, that sounds really exciting. Well, I want you to know I'm here to help you, you know, accomplish your expectations, accomplish your goals. But so often people, you know, aren't clear on what they're being held accountable for and what people expect of them and all. And the clearer you make it in the beginning, the better.
I love it. My dad always told me, as the leader, it is your job to be vividly clear in your messaging of what's expected of your people. And if you have this big visionary goal that the company's trying to do, your job also is to show them how they and their contribution impacts that large goal. And so they know exactly what they're being measured against, because the worst thing ever is to be like, am I doing a good job? I think.
That's right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. No, it's got to be something where people are really clear, you know, and they look forward to seeing you, you know, even if they're not working as well as they are. They know you're not there to beat them up. You're there to help them, And it's so interesting. Like when I talk about servant leadership to a lot of people, they think it's about the inmates running the prison or trying to, please everybody, but they don't realize the two parts of servant leadership. The first is vision, direction, values, and goals. And that's the responsibility of the hierarchy. And so if your people aren't clear what they're being asked to do, shame on you, but you need to involve them in doing that, but it's your responsibility. So it begins with the hierarchy. And once the goals and direction and values and all are clear, now you get to the servant part, and now you philosophically turn the pyramid upside down, and now you're working for them. And it's that 1-2 punch of the leadership and the servant part that makes it really exciting. And see, the 1-minute manager is servant leadership in action, because what's the first secret? 1-minute goal setting. And then once that was clear, now we turn the pyramid around, upside down. You wander around and catch people doing things right and redirect their efforts. In the same way with SL2, our situational approach, first thing is goal setting. Then you look at each of the goals and decide what their development level is, and decide to need a directing, coaching, supporting, or a delegating leadership style. So it's the whole key, Ryan, is 1 + 1 is a lot greater than 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the great leaders think it's about we, not me.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about motivation, Ken. And you write, never assume you know what motivates a person. Can you share more about understanding the motivations of the people you're leading?
Well, again, it's a dialogue. You want to say to your people, your responsibilities now, but what's going to really keep you going and motivate you? I'm going to be here for you. Is it money? Is it recognition? Is it more responsibility? What really is it that motivates you? And again, it's that two-way dialogue, and you're trying to find out from them rather than assuming that you know what motivates people. And a lot of people assume, well, they're really interested in money. Well, money is very often a byproduct of other motivations and all. And it's just good to check with people and find out, it's that we versus me.
Can I don't know if Jim Collins is one of your friends, but you guys are in similar regard in my mind.
Yeah, I have a great lot of respect for Jim. Yeah.
He writes about the trust wager, and he learned from his mentor, Bill Lazier, about like leading with trust. And I'm curious, you write about this as well. From a leadership perspective, who should make the first move to extend trust?
Well, we say in the book that trust isn't done to people, it's done with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you need to begin by trusting your people, and that's the delegation and all. And when they trust that when you delegate to them, you're also there to help them, then they start to trust you. But it begins with the leader. Trust starts with the leader.
Absolutely. I look at like the characteristics of servant leaders, and one of them is humility. And these are back-to-back sections of the book where people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less. But you also write, it's okay to toot your own horn. What about that dichotomy when it comes to humility, not thinking less of yourself, just thinking of yourself less, as well as it's okay to toot your own horn?
Well, it's interesting is that the humility thing is that you want to be there to serve other people. It's not about you and all, but don't be afraid to sort of be part of the team when the praise comes around and your team is doing well, and to say, we really did well, and I am proud of you, and I'm proud of any part that I've played for it. So don't be afraid to toot your own horn, as long as it's not, I'm the best and you guys are subordinate. What a terrible term, subordinary. rather than, we're colleagues, we're co-workers and all that.
How do you create, in Dan Pink's book, he writes a lot about motivation, and one of the things that he says is autonomy. How do you create autonomy through boundaries?
Well, I think that what's happened is that, when people say you want to give people autonomy, they're saying, well, you're just sort of saying, let them do anything you want. No, what they need to do is boundaries. We say a river without banks is a large puddle. It's the banks that keep it going there. And all the banks are is to say, here's the goals of the organization. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. And your work is within those boundaries. And you're going to play an important part. And we want to help you be a really important team player in this.
I'm curious, Ken. So you've mentioned that you essentially have worked with all of the most impactful companies in all industries, from all over the world. You're regularly giving keynotes on Zoom. You were doing it in person. When you think about all of the amazing leaders that you've met over the course of your career, what have you found to be some of the common attributes, common behaviors of the leaders who have sustained excellence over an extended period of time?
Well, I think one of the key things is that they don't think it's all about them. The other thing is, like, one of my favorite leaders that working with was Herb Kelleher with Southwest Airlines. Tremendous sense of humor, and I think humor is important. My father told me when I was growing up, Ken, he retired as an admiral in the Navy, so he was my initial mentor. I never forget, I won the president of the 7th grade in New Rochelle, New York, and I came home and I'm all pumped up, and my father says, Ken, now that you're president, this begins your leadership training. Don't ever use your position. Great leaders are great because people respect and trust them, not because they have power, and so with Herb, he just had this great sense of humor. And my father always said to me, Ken, take what you do seriously, but yourself lightly, and I think that's really what gets a humor, because if you start to take yourself seriously, you're going to be really uptight, and as I said earlier, life is a very special occasion if you get out of your own way and get involved with great people like yourself and just have some fun.
I mean, I love that part of it, but it seems like at times it can get lost. But I found both humor to be a commonality with transformational friendships. Like, a transformational friendship by definition changes you. They transform you for the better. Humor is a big element of that. And when I think about the leaders who have impacted me the most, yes, I think they have high expectations. They're willing to push. They're highly competent, right? They're extremely prepared and hard workers. But we also had a lot of fun. We can make fun of one another. Like, we grew closer.
That's part of the humor.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's not talked about as much, though, as this sense of
really
humor,
is.
of not taking yourself like overly serious. Like, yes, the work is important and we're going to work really hard. But also, I sense that from the second you and I have connected on Zoom, that you've accomplished some amazing things, but you don't take yourself that seriously. You're having fun like the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, people say, you're 82 years old. Why don't you retire? And that's why I wrote a book called Refire, Don't Retire. Make the rest of your life the best of your life, With Mort Chavis, was a great guy out here, just died recently. He was the head of the psych department at UCSD. And because it's so true, is that you want to have fun. Another really big key of a servant leader is they listen more than they speak, and they ask more than they talk, and so they listen, they ask. Those are really key stuff,
Servant leaders don't command people to obey. They invite people to follow. Big difference, because
Yeah.
one of the things I thought about is compliance can be commanded, commitment cannot. So
That's right.
if I am your boss, I can force you to comply if you want to keep your job, and you will
Yes.
until you're ready to leave the job.
Yeah.
But I cannot force you to commit. And I feel like that's a big part of a mantra I learned from you, is this become the type of leader that people choose to raise their hand to commit to, not the ones that they just have to comply because of your positional power.
Yes. And they'll commit to you if they know that you're committed to them.
Mhm.
You know, again, I keep emphasizing the two-way street of this whole thing. I mean, you just happen to have the title as manager, but the team, without your team, you're nothing, you know.
Right.
And I mean, it was interesting, all the kudos and everything for John Madden, you know, I mean, he was quite a guy, but he constantly talked about the team, and it wasn't about him. And he just constantly said, you know, team. And notice, you know, I think it might have even been Madden that said it first, is that there's no I in team, the word team.
Mhm.
So it's really working together.
One other part you write about that I've grown to love as well is that servant leaders love feedback. And I think this is an also common attribute of leaders who have sustained excellence over time, is that they are regularly putting themselves in positions to receive feedback, and they do it in a way that encourages people to continually give them more and more feedback, and that's how they iterate and get better. But you've said that servant leaders love feedback. You share more about the feedback loop process.
Yes, and we say that feedback is the breakfast of champions, you know.
Mhm.
And it was a concept that I got from a colleague of mine, Rick Tate, you know, years ago, and I thought it was really a great comment. But what you really want to say to your people is that I'm here to help you, but I also need you to help me and give me feedback of what I'm doing that's helpful, what I'm doing that's not helpful, and all, because we really are a team. And it's not just about me giving you feedback. I need feedback too, because I want to grow in this position. I want to be more helpful to you. And boy, their eyes really light up when they realize that, because so often, you know, people will give feedback up the hierarchy, and then they kill the messenger, you know.
Mhm.
It really is, it's kind of crazy, rather than saying, you know, when people give you feedback, first thing you say is thank you. And then you sort of say, you know, tell me more,
Mhm.
you know, and things like that.
How you receive the feedback sends the message to the person who delivers it. Can he or she take it? And
That's right.
if you give me feedback, Ken, and I immediately get really defensive and start explaining it away, what am I telling you? I am basically telling you, don't give me any more feedback, because
That's right.
I can't take it.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
be prepared to accept it, even if it stings a little bit or it hurts in the short term. It'll make you better in the long term.
Yeah. Like this year, my wife Margie and I will be celebrating our 60th anniversary. And people say, what's it take to create a great marriage? It's a team, you know, and that we give each other feedback. You know, Margie says she was only trying to change me the first 11 years, and then she finally decided she was going to love the whole package, you know. And but it really is fun. What happens so often in marriages, you know, again, we seagull a home, you know, and come in the door and start, you know, telling people what they're doing wrong and all, rather than coming home and saying, hey, you know, what is it? You know, we're really excited now. Our son Scott is the president of our company now, and he took over right in the beginning of 2000, you know, and all through this whole COVID thing has done an amazing job. And our daughter Debbie's the head of marketing. And Margie's brother, Tom, who was born when she was a freshman at Cornell, he's our CEO, and Scott's wife, Madeline, headed up our coaching business for a long time. So it's a family-run business, and we're always laughing with each other, but also giving each other feedback. Like we were supposed to go on this cruise, after, and Scott, our son, called up and he said, I've been appointed by the family to be the spokesperson. We don't want you to go on that cruise. We think that's nuts, And rather than saying, who do you all think you are? Tell me more,
I'm curious from a dad's perspective and a husband, when you raise children and you start becoming financially secure as you did through your hard work, but you want to build like toughness and your kids to have grit, but all of a sudden you have enough money where you can kind of buy anything that they would ever need. And it sounds like you guys have done a great job of somehow having them exhibit those qualities that you want in a person. How did you and Margie figure out how to do that?
Well, we did several things. When they came with the company, they started at a low level and got that salary, And we also told them that we weren't going to give them a bunch of money. What we were going to do is create opportunities for them and our family. So we did help them both get a house, so they had some stability there. But that was it. And Margie developed a term that what we want to do is create magical memories with our family. So for her 80th birthday last November, we took 18 people to Hawaii to celebrate her birthday for a week and paid for the whole thing. And people said, God, that's unbelievable. We said, well, that's what we want to do. Why would we want to wait till we're dead and give them money? We're going to create opportunities for us as a family now. And so it was a fun opportunity to do that. And so
I love that, creating magical memories. How was that week in Hawaii?
Unbelievable. We had a house that was big enough for all 18 of us to stay in.
Oh, wow.
It had a wonderful backyard with a pool. We were 2 blocks from the beach and all, and it was just a fun thing. And we danced at night, and all that kind of thing. It was just it was great. We took our family and Margie's brother's family and a couple that have been working with us closely, my assistant and his wife, and so there was 18 of us, and we had our grandkids there, and I mean it was just a hoot, and
how does it feel? How does it feel? I mean, you're the reason that happened, and both you are, I assume, but how does that feel when you look around, you pause for a second, and all these people are here in this beautiful house in Hawaii with the pool and the food and the dancing? I mean, how does it feel?
Well, it feels great. We feel we've really been blessed, and Margie and I don't take it for granted, and that's why we've really decided we want to share, I mean, we just, our company's gone through some tough times and our son Scott we basically gave 25% of what we made this year back to the people in the company, so people are getting the best raises that they've ever had and all that kind of thing. We constantly want to share. It's not just about filling our barrels, but what can we do to make our people feel that they're part of the team and all that kind of thing. So it's just been a philosophy, and Marge and I were both blessed with great parents and made us feel good about ourselves. And because I think if you feel good about yourself, then you're willing to help other people feel good about themselves. All my studies is that the people who have control needs, they're scared little kids inside. I mean, the guy that wrote "I'm okay, you're okay" years ago said the worst life position is "I'm okay, you're not." And he said all those people that act like that are covering up not okay feelings about themselves. and they don't want to admit that they don't know, so they have control needs. Where it's so amazing when you tell your people, we have this problem here, kind of wish we knew what to do. We have some thoughts. What are your thoughts? We need your help. And rather than saying, how come this idiot's the manager, they say, wow, we're going to have some fun together.
I looked at a picture of inside of your office, and I saw this online. I noticed that you have your mission and your values listed, and the values listed were trustworthiness, focus and clarity, getting to D4, dialogue, ownership, and Kenship. I'm curious of your values process, and maybe if you could expand on a couple of them. I'm first curious about D4. What does it mean to get to D4?
Well, D4 is the highest level of development in our situational approach to leadership. That means the person is both competent and committed. And so what we want to do is, as an organization, as well as individuals, get to D4. How do we help people really become peak performers, and how do we keep ourselves as an organization going, and I mean, when I look at this year, this is going to be probably our finest year we've had. Unbelievable. And because what happened is that in 2000, we would maybe do 15 or 20 online programs a month. We're now doing over 800 a month.
Wow.
And my son brought in really good high-tech people and turned all of our curriculum into online stuff that we could really, because people want the stuff, but they, don't want to gather together. And a lot of companies kept their old thing. And now we can service companies where we can do it in Zoom meetings and Zoom training and online stuff, and which has really been, so it was really, and Scott really made that happen. And he, it's interesting, he sends out an email to everybody in the company once a week, because when he took over as president, he told them what his values were. And his number one value was forthrightness. He said, I want to constantly tell you what I know, what I don't know, and what I wish I knew. And he writes an email to everybody every month around forthrightness. And here's what I know, what I don't know. And people just see the openness of that, and just love that kind of thing. And so, Margie's and my roles are really kind of head cheerleaders, and the three of them are really running the thing with all their good team that they put together.
I love it. One of the other values, this will be the last one I cover, is called Kenship, Kenship, Kenship. What does the value of Kenship mean?
Well, it's about having fun while we work. It's about, getting and giving feedback. It's about all the things that we've talked about today. And we want to walk our talk rather than just, talk it and not walk it. In fact, it's really interesting. The reason we initially started our company, Margie said, a lot of people and we were already now speaking and doing some writing, they have publicists, and then they have people who promote them and all that, but they don't have organizations. And she said, I think we ought to create an organization to see if we can practice what we preach and have a laboratory where we can test what we're doing. And that's really been important. And I think that's all part of Kenship.
I love it.
I wasn't involved. They created a whole committee to come up with the values. Really? And ran it through everybody in the company. It took us a whole year of back and forth with people in the company and all to that. So they came to me and they said, do you mind if we call this Kenship? I said, if you want.
Sure. One more, I'm curious, Ken, for someone who's a bit earlier in their career, maybe they recently graduated college or within a few years, and they really want to be an impactful leader. They want to make a difference. They want to help people. They want to leave their mark. what are some general pieces of life/career advice you'd give to that person?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to be a lifetime learner
Mm.
and have a learning attitude, And it's really interesting, here you're a young person, you'll go into an organization and you think you're just supposed to stay there. Well, look at who are considered really good leaders in the company and go to them and say, I've been watching you and listening to people's feedback about your leadership. Would you be willing to go to lunch with me? I'd just love to talk to you and just pick your brain about what it's taken to learn what you've done and be somebody who asks people to teach them. And I tell you, people love young people to come to them and say, could I learn from you, and not act like they're smart Alex and all. So I think that's the biggest thing is just be open to learning and go to people and all. And that's really what I did with Paul Hersey initially, because he had been in the field for 10 years before I was. And I, asked him if I could take his course, and he said, you got to take it for credit. So I ended up
I love it, man. Ken, I love it because that's a whole mantra of like being a learning leader. Is my favorite leaders are the ones who are constantly working on themselves, constantly curious and out there seeking knowledge and trying to find a better way and wanting to interact with people and learn from their life experiences, because we're all just the sum of our life experiences and there's so many different ones out there. How cool is it just to learn the stories of others and how they've been able to do what they do? I'm fascinated by that. That's why I do this podcast, man. So
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful for you and all that you've done, as well as invest an hour with me. I highly encourage people, 1 Minute Manager for sure, if you haven't already, get that. But then this most recent one, Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to Be a Servant Leader and Build Trust. This is Ken's latest book. He wrote it with Randy Conley. Highly recommend people pick it up, and it's written in a manner that I think is you take the complex and make it simple, as well as make it implementable, as I mentioned before. And I think that's what makes it useful, and those are really important books. So I'm just super grateful. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Well, I appreciate it, and good luck to you. I'd love to see young people like you that are excited about our field and are coming along, so that I know when I'm gone someday, maybe when I'm 100, that you'll be one of the guys out front.
Ken, I'm telling you, man, you have the blueprint for what I love to do. Yeah. You've mapped it out before it was ever done before. And so that's why I really admire not only your books and what you've done and the manner in which the way that you are, but what you've built, because it's really, really hard. And you've done it with a big smile on your face while helping millions of people all over the world. It's inspiring, man. It's inspiring to see that you've done it. And that to me is like, sure. This is one of the guys to follow.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you can be one of our consulting partners where, you don't have to, give up what you're doing in your own, but we have people that have their own organizations that also do stuff for us.
Love it. I love it, man. Well, thank you again for being here and for investing your time with me. I'd love to continue this dialogue and our dialogue as we both progress, man.
Well, take care of yourself. God bless.
Thank you.